Hi guys, so okay, so let's see. I have one scheduled, but for some reason I'm not being able to connect with it. I'm probably doing something wrong. So hopefully you guys can get over on this one. I'm gonna try to delete this other stream. Hi, okay, good, you guys are here. So let me try to see if I can delete this so that people aren't all confused over here. All right. Okay, so that should take care of that. Sorry about being late, guys. That was I don't know what I'm doing. That's probably what that was. So get started about 5 minutes into the video. So if you are watching this after it's been streamed, you can jump ahead to 5 minutes. So today what we're going to be talking about is service dogs. And so to kind of go over what we're going to be doing here. So this is something new that we're trying on the channel where we're going to be doing live streams and you guys can be a part of the conversation. We're going to be talking about certain topics, but in order to really stick to that, I'm only going to be answering questions and reading comments from people who are talking about the topic. So I want you guys to be a part of it. Just remember, like random questions and stuff about the animals isn't going to be covered in here. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. Also, we are monitoring the chat as well, trying to do that to keep it clean because sometimes people get really crazy. So hopefully none of that happens, but I am going to ban people if they get too out of control. Okay, so let's see, we're about 2.5 minutes in, so another 2.5 minutes, and then we can get started. And for you guys, if you want me to talk about certain things in the videos, you can let me know, like on Instagram, Twitter. Let me know what kind of topics you want me to cover in the future, because this is going to be every Monday. So every Monday, we're going to sit down and talk about a certain subject. I was also thinking we could talk about it as a community, because certain people might have questions, or maybe some people have a different opinion. And depending on how it goes, like maybe we can even have other creators on here and talk to other creators about subjects, and not even just, you know, something we agree with. It could be something that we see differently. And so just, yeah, talk about all of that stuff. So that'll be fun. My hair is actually all wet because it is raining outside. And right before this stream, I was running around trying to make sure all the animals were okay and all of that. So let's see. Hopefully the chat doesn't get too crazy either. So I'm doing like, I'll probably start in these videos like at about 5 minutes in and actually really get into the topic. That way it gives people a chance to get onto the stream, especially since some people might have been on the other one. So we don't want that to happen. And yeah. So about another minute and we're going to get started here. So hopefully this does well. I think it's something that's going to be really fun. I got the idea from it from some of the other like genres on YouTube where they do these live streams once a week on certain topics, and sometimes like reacting to things. You know, we might also, like if there's some kind of current event that involves animals, that is something we could talk about. And I see questions about service dogs coming up already. So if I don't see your question, just, you know, try to write it again as we go on, in case I miss it. because sometimes it's hard to keep up with all of the comments. All right, so it's time to get started. So today we're going to be talking about service dogs. I've done a lot of videos about service dogs on my channel, but sometimes people are still really confused about it. We're going to be focusing on service dogs and emotional support dogs, or emotional support animals, and talking about what the difference is between those two. So with a little bit about my background, I had a service dog for 6 years, and that was a psychiatric service dog for several different anxiety disorders and depression. And so the reason I don't have a service dog anymore, actually, I do still have my dog. He's just a retired service dog because about almost a year ago now, I decided to retire my service dog. And that was because I was in a really good place. I was doing really good. And really, like, even sometimes when I'm having a bad day, I can think back and be like, okay, like 4 years ago, oh, this is so much worse. And so I got to that point where for those 6 years that I did have him working for me, it was amazing. Huge, huge part of my life that just made everything better for me. It was really great to have him. So it really, really helped me out a lot. And I'm glad that I'm in a place now where I don't have to rely on my service dog. But because of how long I had him, I know the laws really well. I know a lot about service dogs. I've done presentations for businesses teaching employees about service animals and emotional support animals. And so, yeah, I really like talking about it because it's a huge passion of mine. And there's so much bad information out there. People are so confused about what a service dog is, what an emotional support dog is. And even some handlers are confused about it. I've seen a lot of handlers that have a psychiatric service dog call it an emotional support dog, and that is not correct. It's frustrating because that makes people even more confused. So yeah, we're going to be talking about that and discussing the difference. So I have done a lot of videos about service dogs and emotional support dogs, but let's go over this again briefly. A service dog is a dog that has been trained to perform task work for a person with a disability. So basically what this means is that that's like the legal definition. What this means is that the dog has been trained to perform a physical action in order to help a person. So for example, if you have a disability and you require medication, you might have trained your service dog to go and get a bottle of water or to go and get your medication. There are service dogs that have been trained to dial 911 if a person tries to self-harm and commit suicide. There's service dogs that are trained for diabetes, so they'll actually alert the handler to when their blood sugar has dropped too low. There's service dogs that are for seizures and epilepsy. So with that, it depends on the dog and how it's been trained. There is no possible way to train a dog to detect seizures. And so that's one of the things that's tricky. And there are service dogs that will alert to a seizure, but that's a natural instinct. And right now, they don't quite understand how dogs are able to do that. So they can't train them to actually do it. However, they can train dogs to do certain things to help with seizures. So some service dogs actually will tell their handler they're about to have a seizure. And those dogs are just priceless. Those are probably some of the most expensive service dogs too, because like I said, that's just a natural behavior that you can hope for. Then there's the service dogs who will help comfort the person or help stabilize them, or even go and get somebody when the person's having a seizure. So that's one of some of the things that they're trained for. There are service dogs for the blind. That's the one that I think everybody knows about. They help them get around, they lead them. And there's so many different kinds of service dogs. There's just service dogs for all kinds of disabilities, autism, just a lot. So there is also psychiatric service dogs, and that is the same as a service dog. That's just saying something more specific, like diabetic alert dog. As instead, it's psychiatric service dog. And so that's just saying exactly what the dog is trained for. But that's not information that you have to give out. So if you have a service dog that's for anxiety, you don't have to say that it's a psychiatric service dog. You can just say it's a service dog. Nobody needs to know what it has been trained to do, what it's been trained for. What it's trained to do, that's different. So we'll get into that. So one of the things that I see people get confused by is emotional support dogs. So they think, oh, emotion, anxiety, stress, depression, that's emotional. So if my service dog is trained to keep me from self-harming, then, or if my dog's trained to keep me from self-harming, that means it's an emotional support dog. No, that's not true. If your dog is going to go and physically interrupt you from self-harming, then it's a service dog because it's been trained to actually do that task. So that's the big difference. And so an emotional support dog is comforting, but it's not trained to do anything. So an emotional support dog is just there. It's just a friendly dog that you hang out with and you pet them, and that makes you feel better, because I'm sure anybody with pets does realize that animals do comfort us a lot. They are a big part of, keeping us sane and keeping us happy. So emotional support dogs are actually just going to be there to comfort you and to love on you, and they're not trained to do anything. So service dogs that are for anxiety and stuff, they do deep pressure therapy. There's a lot of different task work that they are actually going to be physically trained to do. So that's the big difference between the two. Hope that makes sense. So let's kind of get into these comments and see what questions we have. So I think we could get into service dogs, questions on service dogs and questions on emotional support animals, because that's the other big difference, is that in the United States right now, the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, is the law that protects service dogs, and emotional support dogs are not covered under it. So right now in the United States, only miniature horses and dogs are allowed to be trained to be service animals. And for emotional support animals, you can actually have any type of animal. So that's another huge, huge difference. So we'll get into individual questions about service dogs and questions about emotional support animals. But for right now, let's focus on service dogs versus emotional support dogs. So I want to make sure that you guys kind of have that understood. Like, does anybody have any questions about what the difference would be between the two? I want to make sure everybody's like clear and understanding of what it is. Let's see. Let me look through these comments. Somebody says, can a gecko be an ESA? Yes, a gecko can be an emotional support animal. Where do you get it? Okay, so you can get an emotional support animal anywhere. Basically, you can adopt one, you can buy one, anywhere, because it doesn't need to be trained. Go down to the bottom of these. In Canada, we don't have ESA. It's being debated if comfort is a task. Currently, the only rules are that they have to behave and you have to be disabled. So yeah, comfort. And when I'm talking about this is going to be just in the United States. I don't really know too much about the laws in other countries, but yeah, from what I've heard, Canada's pretty strict about it. But yeah, comfort in the United States, comfort is not a task. It is, and that's where an emotional support animal would come in, because service dogs don't just provide comfort. And yeah, psychiatric service dogs are very comforting. They do provide comfort, but they are trained for other things. So they do a lot of other types of task work. Okay, so I don't see too many questions about one versus the other. So I think everybody pretty much understands basically what the difference would be. So to get a little bit more into the details of it, like I was saying, the Americans with Disability Act is what covers service dogs. So emotional support animals are not covered under that. And the Americans with Disability Act basically makes it so that you can take your service dog everywhere with you. Anything that would be open to the public is where you can take your service dog. So stores, restaurants, movie theaters, things that you would not be able to take the service dog to are limited to bird enclosures, and you can't take a service dog in there. So there's really very few places. Like, obviously, you can't go into the kitchen of a restaurant if you're going there to eat. So you wouldn't be able if you couldn't do it like without the dog, you definitely can't do it with the dog. So, but if there is a food line like a salad bar or a buffet, something like that, you can have your dog with you when you're going up to get food and stuff. So they are completely granted public access, and nobody can ask you what your disability is. There is ways that the law protects the businesses from people that have fake service dogs, but somebody can't go up to you and be like, "Well, you look normal. What's wrong with you?" There's a lot of service dogs for invisible disabilities. So emotional support animals are covered under the Air Carrier Access Act and the Fair Housing Act. So the Fair Housing Act basically states that the animal can live with you regardless of whatever your living situation is with a landlord. So let's say that you lived in an apartment and they didn't allow certain breeds or certain sizes and they required a pet deposit. So under the Fair Housing Act, if your dog is an emotional support dog, then you can have that dog with you in the apartment, regardless of size, regardless of breed, and you do not have to pay the pet deposit. But there are some limitations. For example, if your city doesn't allow miniature pigs inside city limits, then you can't say, "Oh, my pig's an emotional support animal," and then have it inside city limits. It doesn't cover that at that point, because you still have to follow the local regulations. So, for example, you wouldn't be able to have a llama in an apartment because that's just it's not possible. It's not safe for other people. It's not safe for the llama. But if you had a parrot and your apartment was complaining about the parrot, if it's an emotional support animal, then you can have it. Now, if your dog tears up stuff in the apartment, that doesn't mean that just because it's an emotional support animal, you aren't going to have to pay anything for that. At that point, yeah, you do have to pay for damages. If your dog's super aggressive and it starts showing aggression towards other people that live in your area, in your apartment complex, then yeah, you're going to run into trouble regardless if it's an emotional support animal or not. So, there's certain things that do come up. It's not like, oh, you get this and then you're totally exempt from the rules completely. It's not like that. Air Carriers Access Act. So that was the other one that I mentioned. That basically means that you can take your ESA onto an airplane with you. But that one's kind of tricky. As you've seen in the news, there's been a lot of people coming out where emotional support peacock, and they have to reasonably accommodate you. So, if you have a 300-pound pig, you're not going to be able to take it onto the airplane. And that has, over the last year, they've gotten a lot stricter with that. So, and two, the thing is that if you're going to go on vacation somewhere, you're not going to be able to take your ESA places. So I don't know why you would want to fly with a dog and then get in trouble for leaving it in a crate in a hotel room. You can't do that. So there's restrictions there. Okay, I'm sorry if I've missed a lot of comments. So just try to rewrite your comments so that I can see it if I've have missed it. If you needed me to answer something, we're going to get into individual questions on service dogs and ESAs in a bit. What about high school and college? So that's like somewhat of a, for college, for ESAs, that's somewhat of a debate. There are schools that do accommodate emotional support animals, but it's just difficult. It's difficult to make it, um, to accommodate the student and accommodate all the other students, because you're not really living in an apartment complex in that situation. You're living in dorms. So there are schools that will work with you. Now, when it comes to a service dog, your service dog has to be allowed to go into, your high school classes and your college classes and stay with you in a dorm. Like I was saying, they have way more rights than an emotional support animal. So you can't take emotional support animal with you to your college classes and your high school classes. But for service dogs, yes. I'm 11 and people say I'm too young to have a service dog. There's no such thing as being too young to have a service dog. In fact, little toddlers will have their own service dog. Now, of course, at that point, the parent is in charge of the service dog. Like, they're the ones actually, um, working with it, and it actually does the task work for the parents, but is helping with the child. And that's usually like your autism service dogs. But if you're 11, you're fully capable of having a service dog at that age. And if you're in school, the only thing is that you need to be responsible for, taking your dog out to the bathroom and stuff. So the school needs to accommodate you, but you still need to be the one responsible for the dog. And so I'm sure that's what you're doing, and that's perfectly fine. There's no age limit on having a service dog or age requirement. Can you have more than one ESA? So that's a good question. Technically you can, but you have to have a reason for it. So if you, are, let's say that you have multiple dogs, that's going to be kind of hard to justify why you have, two or three emotional support dogs. But let's say you had an emotional support rat, it would be easier to explain why, because basic care requirement for rats is that you have to own at least two. So you could say it's a pair of emotional support rats, and that when you're at work or school or whatever, they have to get the proper care, so they can't just be left by themselves in the apartment all day. Someone's commenting psychiatric versus ESA. So, like I said, they're trained. Service dogs are trained. So, psychiatric service dog is going to be trained to, let's say, for example, do pressure therapy, actually, using pressure points to get you out of a panic attack or anxiety attack, whereas your emotional support dog is just going to come and sit with you and lick you. So the emotional support dog just provides comfort. They're not actually doing anything. And the service dogs go through years of training, and ESAs require absolutely no training whatsoever. Does a service dog have to be from an agency? It does not. You can train. Hoping for the day. So you're saying you can just decide for yourself that you need a service dog ESA, and that's that. Too many people self-diagnose themselves. Oh yeah, I think that self-diagnosis is a huge problem. And no, you definitely should not be saying that you need a service dog if you've not been evaluated for it. If you know you have diabetes, well, and you know that you feel a service dog would improve your life, then you can get a service dog. But you can't just be like, well, I feel like I have anxiety today, I'm gonna make my dog a service dog. You need to actually have the paperwork, because you have that if problems ever come up where you're going to have to legally show that your dog is a service dog, you need to have medical information. You need to show how you've been being treated by a doctor for whatever thing you supposedly have, and how that service dog is helping you. So, or how your ESA is helping you. Now, I guess that's kind of where it gets a little tricky. So with service dogs, you you don't really have to have specific paperwork for them. For an ESA, you do. So you can't self-diagnose for an ESA and decide that you just are going to have an emotional support animal and your landlord has to deal with it. You have to have a written letter from a therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, or counselor that says you need a support animal in your life. So you can't really self-diagnose for that because you're gonna have to go to someone and get a letter, and they're probably gonna want to know like what's going on. Okay, so I'm getting the same. If I'm trying to go through the comments, so if you're spamming the chat with something that's not about um, assistance animals, I'm going to time out for a little bit. Do you need a service dog for depression or an ESA? So a service dog is trained to physically help you with depression. An ESA is not going to physically help you. So that is depending on how bad your depression is. I guess some people that have real bad depression self-harm. So if you're sitting there pulling your hair out, an ESA is not going to stop you from doing that. A service dog is going to come up and move your hand away, and you're going to go back at your hair, and it's going to move your hand away again, and it's going to sit there and do that until you get bored, because dogs don't get bored as quickly as we do. So it depends, like how bad is your condition. What happens if your service dog or ESA dies? You'd probably get a new one at that point, because it is a working animal. So for somebody who really needs a service dog, if something happens to the service dog, they're going to have to get another one. Can you get an ESA from an animal shelter? Yes. So I guess we'll just get into answering individual questions about them. That's going to be easier to answer. I have an invisible disability and I don't have money. Can I self-train? Yes, it is completely legal to train a dog yourself. I'm just not a huge fan of it because I've been attacked by so many self-trained service dogs, owner-trained service dogs, and it's just fake service dogs basically. But if you put a lot of work into it, yes, you can do it. I recommend though, don't get a puppy, get an older dog. And two, people think that they're going to get a puppy and they're going to be able to train it as a service dog, but you're not going to know until the dog's like 4 months old if it's going to have the temperament for it. So I would recommend going to a shelter and finding a dog that's going to really work with you. What do you think is the best breed for a service dog? That depends on what you need from a service dog. So any breed can be a service dog. If you need a mobility support dog, somebody that's going to help you walk, then you need a really big one. But if you need a diabetic alert dog that's going to just smell your blood sugar, it can be a tiny dog. Yeah, any breed can be a service dog. What happens if you need a service dog but you're afraid of dogs? So having a disability doesn't automatically mean, hey, you should get a service dog. There's lots of people who could very, very much benefit from having a service dog, but should not have one because it could inconvenience their life. They could be afraid of the dog. Like dogs. Dogs shed and get hair everywhere and need to be taken care of, and that might not be something that somebody wants to do. So, uh, service dogs are not for everybody. And two, having a service dog inconvenience your life in certain ways. So maybe you're better off not having one. It really depends on the individual, and they're a lot of responsibility. Do you think pit bulls are good service dogs? Uh, I like want to say that I would think that they are, but every pit bull that a service dog that I've come across has tried to attack my service dog. And so, like, I'm sure you can train a pit bull to be a service dog, but gosh, I've had such bad experience with them. Let's see. Where am I? These comments are. I am really sorry if I've missed any comments from you guys. What's the good side and downside of having a service dog? I'm getting a puppy, but I'm not going to train it until it's like 3 or 4, but I'm not sure if I want to because how often you get to see them. I don't know what you mean by how often you get to see them, but if you are going to train a dog to be a service dog, waiting until they're 3 or 4 years old is very late. That means you only have 3 years for them to be working. So you definitely want to start younger. But like starting with a puppy can be difficult. But if as soon as you get the dog, you should start training. I had like for my corgi puppies, all of them were potty trained to go on pads and came to their name at 8 weeks. Is it possible to get a service dog for ADHD? I think so. I think I've heard of that, but I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. I wish I could afford a service dog, and I want to tell you I'm depressed. Yeah, and it can be difficult to afford a service dog, especially one that's already trained. I've never heard of a service dog for gluten detection. Um, there's service dogs that do, are for allergies and food allergies, but never heard of one for gluten. And two, I mean, um, if you have actual celiac disease, or I mean, it has to be something where your life is being like your life is just have your dog with you all the time. Um, it has to have a service dog. You really do have to actually be struggling. You have to completely lack independence. Service dog for PTSD. Yeah, there's a lot of service dogs that are trained for PTSD. And not just for people that are in the army, but PTSD means post-traumatic stress disorder. So it has nothing to do with actually being in the military. That's just an example that a lot of people give, and a lot of people that are in the military suffer from PTSD. But you can be a high school student that has PTSD. Yeah, like I was saying, you should be Raiden. You should be I can't say that, prescribed a service dog. That is the correct way to go about it, because then you're going to have the documentation and stuff like that. Should I get a service dog if I'm stressed? No. That means you're not taking it seriously. What experience do you have with miniature horses as service animals? I've actually never seen a service horse in real life, so I have no experience with it. Can your dog be approved by a doctor? No. Don't know. Well, maybe some doctors, but actually going through, the school and the training and everything to become a doctor, they do absolutely nothing with training dogs. So no, your doctor is gonna have no idea if your dog is ready to actually be a service dog. You need to go to a dog trainer. Can you have a service dog for cholesterol because it causes heart attacks? What is your dog going to do in order to control your cholesterol? So that's the question. If you're wondering, can you have a service dog for this? You need to think, what can the dog do in order to help this? So if you have cholesterol, is the dog just going to take burgers out of your hand and keep you from eating it? It really does have to, and that's a joke, okay? It really does have to be something that they're going to do. So, yeah, A really easy example is the diabetic alert dogs. They tell you, hey, your sugar, check your sugar. Your sugar's too low. And they're like, oh man, I need my insulin. Let me give myself a shot. That is why they're service dogs. So they need to actually tell you. Somebody's asking, what is the difference between service dogs and emotional support dogs? At this point, questions like that make me want to cry. If a service dog is helping other people, if there's a service dog there helping other people, so would you get to see them? I don't understand what this question is. Like your dog is a service dog, but it is someone you're close to, so you see them all the time, and or someone else. Like, are you going to see the dog working? If you're next to the person, probably, because the dog's going to be there working, so you would see it. Can you have a dog for cardiac and diabetes? Oh, celiac and diabetes. I don't know about celiac, but diabetes. How can dogs detect low blood sugar levels? They smell it. They are actually able to smell it. So that's how they do it. And they train them to alert to when it gets to a certain point. Okay. I really want my question to be answered. I get panic attacks most days and in bad weeks more twice a day, pretty severe. Also, dissociative and manic episodes plus depression. Well, there's no question in there. It's hard to like sit here and read them. Ow, my wrist. Best and worst things about having a service dog. So the best things is the independence. Like, for example, I couldn't go out by myself. I couldn't drive anywhere by myself. Just so limited and constantly scared of having a panic attack and having bad anxiety. So the best thing was being able to go out by myself and being able to drive again and being able to know that if I was going to have a panic attack, the dog was going to tell me before it happened so that, I didn't embarrass myself. Because it's embarrassing having a panic attack in public. The worst things about having a service dog is people can be so rude to you and so inconsiderate. That's pretty bad. You you get so much attention for having a service dog. And two, like the little inconveniences of you're constantly going to have a dog with you. So you have to revolve your life around that. You have to have a place for your dog to sit in the car. If you're going somewhere, you can't do certain things like, if you're going to go to an amusement park, you can't leave your dog sitting there while you go on a roller coaster. Like, it's things like that that I think people don't realize. They're like, oh, your dog goes with you everywhere. That's so cool. And it's such a thoughtless comment. No, you don't want your pet going everywhere with you. Taking your pet out when you choose to is cool. Not being able to go somewhere without them is not. So, like for me, it was beneficial, and I liked having a service dog. But for people to be like, "Man, it's so cool that you have a service dog," it's like, no, it's actually not cool that I have a debilitating disability that doesn't allow me to function as a normal person. It's not cool at all. This title of the video says cheat. Does it? That that's not good. Isma Dav. You can anybody asking what kind of animals can be service animals or emotional support animals? When this video is finished, just start at the beginning, because that way I can answer new questions and not repeat the same question throughout the entire hour that we're here. My name is Cam. Please don't answer questions if you don't know what the answer is to it. So she's asking, can ducks be service animals? And this person says ducks can't be trained well enough. No, that's not the correct answer. The United States does not recognize service animals. That's why they can't be service animals. It's not about how well an animal can be trained. I mean, that's a big thing, but when we're talking about it legally, it's because there is no protection for a service duck. If you're going to choose a service dog out of a shelter, what personalities would you look for? A dog that's really calm, that's focused, that is going to be able to learn things. You know, teaching a dog to sit, for example, is something you can do really quick. So you can work with the dog and see how quickly it can pick up on stuff. If you see a dog that is jumping up and down and you walk up to it and immediately jumps on the fence, like, that's a dog that's not going to work out too well as a service animal, because you're going to be going into public places where there's kids and shouting and all kinds of stuff. And the dog has to completely ignore those things and focus all the attention on you. So dogs that are calm and actually being able to, not be constantly barking at something. So that's what you want to look for, is a dog that's really going to be able to focus. Let's see. Too many comments. How much does it cost to get a service dog? So that really depends on the disability. The most expensive service dogs are going to be the service dogs for the blind. They take, I think, a full 2 years at least to train them. So that's going to be pretty expensive. Your anxiety, psychiatric service dogs, they actually don't take as long to train, because it's just the task work that you're training them for. So it depends all on that. Summer Stritz, I think that's your name. Sorry. Yeah, you have to outweigh the pros and the cons. When I had my service dog for 6 years, the pros outweighed all the cons. So it really depends on the individual. When you have a service dog, do you have to bring the dog everywhere you go, or can you choose when you bring them or not? So basically, if you truly need a service dog, you're going to need that dog with you everywhere. Yeah, there's going to be certain times where you're going to be like, okay, today I'm going to leave the dog at home because there's this, situation that I'm going to where I just don't want to take them. That's going to come up, but that's not going to be like a once a week thing. Or yes, you're going to have them with you all the time. For a psychiatric service dog, it can be a little dog. Yes, it can be. A lot of people actually like small dogs for that. Laura H., I train service dogs for a living. That's awesome. Wait, can service dogs be service dogs if they have something wrong with them? That's a very good question. No. A service dog should be completely healthy. You want to make sure that they're just super healthy. There's nothing wrong with them. There's no physical problems. My service dog had allergies. That's really not too big of a deal. But you need to get them checked for like hip dysplasia, things like that. They need to, be evaluated to make sure that they're going to be fit to be a service dog. So yeah, you don't want any dogs that like have health problems or things like that, because that's not fair to them. It's a lot of work for them, so they need to be fit and healthy. What do you think is the? Oh wait, I already answered that one. I have two rescue dogs that I saved from Spain. What if they were stray dogs? Can they be? Lot dogs were originally stray rescued, adopted dogs. So yeah, a lot of adopted rescued dogs are service dogs. What's the benefits of a cat as an ESA? I guess just people like cats. You gotta like your ESA, otherwise that's not gonna help you. Can a service dog have 3 legs? It should not. That should not be a service dog. What age should you retire a service dog? So that really depends on the dog. Caspian, let's see, Caspian's 7 now. So he was like 6 when I retired him. He probably had like 2 or 3 more years of work. And that depends on the breed. If you have a large breed, they're going to have a shorter working life. If you have a small breed, they're probably going to have a much longer working life. And it depends on the individual dog. Like, I think as an owner, you're going to know when your dog is slowing down and they're just, need to have some rest, With service dogs, I was told it's bad to get a shelter to go to a shelter to get one. I'm against buying from those. So that's kind of two extremes there, going from shelter to mill. There's a lot of in between. So if I to start training as a service dog, that does not mean they're going to become a service dog. But if you decide to not go with that option, that doesn't mean you're going to automatically go to a mill, to a puppy mill. You can go to an agency, and an agency trains dogs. So it's not going to be up to you to train the dog. The dog is going to be given to you fully trained. That you have to pay for. There's grants, scholarships, funds, or you just pay for it out of pocket. Then there's breeders. There's a lot of good breeders. So you have definitely a lot of options besides just going to a mill. Will a service dog protect its owner if another animal attacks it? It might. It's not trained to do that, but I think that animals that are very bonded to their person and then there's a threat, that's just going to be a natural response for some of them. You don't want a service dog that's aggressive, but yeah, in certain situations, that's something that could happen. Worst dog breeds to be service dogs. That's hard. I don't think there really is a worse breed. There's some breeds that have trouble breeding and stuff like that, so they might struggle. But it's down to the individual dog because there's some breeds that are super hyper, and they if they're actually well trained, they can use that energy to are like the worst dogs to train. They are so independent and so like, nah, I don't care about you today. So I bet they would be difficult. I know some people do have Great Pyrenees for like mobility support and stuff like that, but oh god, those dogs are hard. My two are they're tough. Please answer Ankle K's question. I am sorry. Who is Ankle K? Can you okay? Or Ank K? I don't even know how to say that. Can your service dog still behave like a normal pet dog when the vest is off? Yes. So when it's working, they should be really well behaved. When they're at home, you take the vest off. Yeah, they're going to run around. They're going to play just like a normal dog. Let's see. Yeah, that's what, oh, Laura, who said she is a service dog trainer. That's kind of exactly what I said. I don't think any breed of dogs, it moved, couldn't be service dogs, but certain dogs and everything. Yeah. Um, and like I was saying, the Great Pyrenees, they're just tough to train. Uh, but doesn't mean you couldn't. Doesn't mean you couldn't do it. Okay, it looks like I missed a comment about, oh wait, should health insurance cover some of the costs of service dogs? Some do, but it's very rare, and I do believe that they should cover the costs of service dogs. But insurances are starting to cover more and more things, so maybe that one's not too far behind. You can put them on your taxes. Yeah, you can put your service dog on your taxes. So like the cost of their food, their vet bills, things like that. Um, those are things that you could claim on your taxes. Tibetan Mastiffs. I don't know. I've never had to work with one of those dogs. Caspian 7. Let me scroll and see if I missed. I'm sure I missed a lot of comments. I'm trying to go through these. This one says, if someone comes up to you and is horrible to you for having a service dog, that's going to make you panic. So why do people do it, and why do people not like people with service dogs? That's a lot in that comment. Okay, so yeah, that's one of the bad things is like, okay, so you get a service dog for your anxiety, and then you look normal. Obviously, there's nothing physically wrong with you, and then people are like, you don't need a service dog. Yeah, that can definitely make you panic. Confrontation isn't something that really makes me panic, so it wasn't bad for me, but I imagine it'd be really bad for a lot of people, and that's what that'd probably be a con for some people. And why do people do it? Because people are jerks, and people are uneducated and don't know any better and are selfish, and the list goes on. Yeah, it sucks. People on service dog amino say you can't have a service dog for anxiety. Oh gosh. Well, and it's horrible if they did say that. However, I do want to point out that a lot of people say that I say that you can't have a service dog for anxiety, but I've never said that. In a video, I said, if someone goes up to you and says, or like you're at a store or you're at a restaurant and the manager is like, what task work does your dog perform? And that's one of the questions that they can ask you. So you go into a restaurant and you have your service dog, they can ask you, one, is that a service dog? And the second question, what task work is it trained to perform? So if you say, it helps me with my anxiety, That's not the right answer. Ask. Anxiety is a condition. It is not something your dog does. You can say he does deep pressure therapy. Honestly, what I would say is I would usually say he's trained to alert. And that's good enough. Like, honestly, you just need to be able to answer the question. But you can say he alerts, he does deep pressure therapy, he does mobility support. Like, for example, some people get really dizzy with anxiety. I would sometimes. So that's like a tricky statement that I said in the video is if you answer he helps with my anxiety, that's not a real thing. So I want to like hope that that was what they meant and that they don't actually the whole group doesn't actually think that, although it wouldn't be like totally shocking. One of the things that I'm afraid of is about getting a service dog is social anxiety, afraid of people coming up to me judging me. Yeah, that's hard. Um, and you know, you don't owe them any explanation. You don't have to talk to them. You can just walk away from them. And if they keep harassing you, you can find somebody that works there and call security. I'm sorry, Trevor. It should be considered a form of assault to do that to a person. Yeah. Oh, yeah. PTSD is impulse intervention. Yeah, you have to remember all the technical terms. That's what's hard. My family and I both agree that a service dog would be beneficial to my treatment. What's the best way to go about approaching a doctor about it? That can be where it's hard. It's really hard if you're using the service dog for anxiety. Um, Other ones it can be a little bit easier, but I would print out some information of what the dog is going to do to help you and show it to your doctor and let them know that you think that that would be helpful. But it's good you're seeing a doctor, and then that way you have the documentation and stuff, and you can start looking for a service dog. I think someone just said that they petted a service dog. Upset me so much when someone would try to touch my dog. Oh, somebody said I really like some of the topics you bring up and talk about. I really appreciate the honest info. Thank you so much. That's a really, really nice comment. Looks like someone, a few people are arguing in the comments. Let's see. My doctor thinks a service dog would help me, but my parents think that my disability, mainly psychiatric, will go away and that I don't need any help. Oh, that's like so frustrating. Like, I'm so sorry. And sometimes, like, parents are just like, not just parents, people just refuse to admit that people need help with psychiatric illness. So I'm sorry about that. Trevor Hudson, don't ever pet a special needs dog. Are we talking about service dogs there or disabled dogs? Okay, does anybody want their question? Does anybody want their question answered or to tell me something that I might have missed? I know there was a lot of comments that I didn't read. I'm gonna be on probably for maybe like 10 more minutes and try to yes, Aaron, that is correct. Don't ever pet a service dog without permission from the owner. You should always ask for permission to pet someone else's service dog or don't even pet at all. I think the best thing to do is just leave the person alone. And I did a whole video on this about how frustrating it is and like everything that you need to stop saying to service dog handlers. And like, I get it. Like, people want to talk to you because you have a dog and it reminds them of their dog or something, something. But really, it's hard because it's like, okay, I'm gonna run into the store and get some milk and then come back out, and it's almost impossible because people have to keep asking you about your dog. And when I had my service dog, I straight out refused to tell people his name. They would ask, and I'd be like, "I'm sorry, it's private." Some people thought his name was private, but act private. But I wouldn't tell anybody that his name was Caspian because immediately they were like, "Oh, they'd get on the floor, Caspian," and it's like, ugh. So I just be like, "Yeah, I'm not telling you his name." Uh, and it's fine when people are polite and they ask. I always said no because that was part of uh, so you don't pet a service dog, one, because they need to focus on their handler. They're not going to be able to alert somebody to a seizure if you're there grabbing them. And two, because that is their working time. So you're not going to, be petting them and playing with them when they're on the clock, basically. And that's what it was for me, is that I wanted my dog to focus on me and I wanted him to know that he was working, that this wasn't time to have fun. So if you really want to ask, you can. And I appreciate people that would ask me politely. That was good. But the best thing is to just really let them go about their business. Is it difficult to? Oh, that moved fast. Okay, hold on. Where am I? See what happened. Where is that comment? I was just reading it. Is it difficult to have a service dog and a regular dog in the same household? Not at all. Caspian, uh, let's see. Well, last winter when I had the two adult corgis, my Chihuahua, and 9 puppies, Caspian was working and it wasn't difficult at all. He was a full-blown working service dog and lived with a lot of other dogs. So, not at all. What is the punishment for someone petting your dog? Me probably telling them off. When going up, when going about getting a service dog, can I go to my personal doctor? Or does it have to be a certain type of doctor? It can just be your personal doctor. They're not going to help you get a service dog. They're not going to do anything for your service dog. So you just need to have a regular doctor seeing you and make sure that you are getting treatment. Because even if you have a service dog that's helping you, you still have to go to the doctor. If you have a psychiatric service dog, you still got to go to therapy. As a teen, how do I approach my parents and or doctor? I would try to have as much information as you can and really understand the law. Understand how it's going to work, what you're protected under, what's going to happen if somebody, tells you can't have the dog there. Make sure you know all of that stuff. Tell them how the dog's going to help you and tell them how the United States legally protects you. How do you know if you need a service dog? If you are unable to function and live a normal life. And if it's due to a disability and a service dog could help you with that, then that's how you know you need one. Jennifer watched the ad. Thank you. Comments moved. I'm trying really hard to like answer everybody right now. Hoping for the day for us. I never let people pet Abby while she's on duty. Yep. How do I tell her I get panic attacks without her thinking it's normal that everyone gets it? I I found it really helpful to watch other people's anxiety and panic videos and being able to show that it's not just a normal thing, that it is a condition. So try to look and see how other people respond to it and feel, and try to show them that. Are ESAs allowed at therapy offices? I saw one at mine while waiting for my appointment. No, ESAs have no public access, and they cannot go with you to a doctor's appointment or an appointment with a therapist. They're not allowed to be there. Uh, they might have allowed the person to bring them in. That could have been a possibility, but they aren't protected under the law to be able to go. So if they do go, it's going to be because they let that person bring them in for their appointment. But I'm assuming you do mean ESA and not therapy animal, because an emotional support animal is not a therapy animal. Do you have any trouble getting into places? Yeah, I live in a border town. So I live on the border of Mexico, very Hispanic culture, and sometimes they hated that I had a dog. But you just got to know your rights. Okay, I think we're getting through these. It depends on the state, but there's very few states that allow other animals to be service animals. Really, there aren't like any. It's really, really hard to find any, because each state can make legislation, but really none of the states have done that. So you're still just working with the ADA when it comes to rights. Yeah, I moved again. Okay. My service dog has her name on her vest, but for a reason, cardiac alert. She alerts differently depending on the severity. So her name's on her vest is meant to calm everyone involved. Yeah, like too, if you are having a disability where you could potentially pass out, you probably want that information on your dog's vest. That would be good to have. So yeah, it really depends on like the person, what the situation is. Do you know any training facilities I could bring a future puppy to train? So an agency is gonna pick out their own puppies and train their own puppies, and then you're gonna go and you're gonna be like, I have this disability, I need a service dog, and then they're gonna give you one. You're not gonna take a puppy to them. And then it makes sense because like you 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 got to really know dogs in order to be picking out puppies that are gonna be able to be service dogs. Lots of puppies go through the training and simply don't pass. So just because you did put them through the training doesn't mean they're going to be a service dog. How to first start is try to communicate with them more. If service dog registration doesn't exist, why do they sell it online? because people like to make money. Yeah, that's basically free money. There is no such thing as a registered service dog. There's no such thing as a registered emotional support dog. There is no registry. So, but people are always like, how do I register my dog as an emotional support dog? And I had so many of those comments on a video where I explained to them how to make their dog an emotional support dog. And they're still like, where do I register? And I'm like, I said in the video, there's no such thing. It's true what you said. Ugh, moved. It's true. Let's see, where was I? It's true what you said about border towns. In my when people don't like animals in stores and stuff. Yeah, it's like when I have traveled in the past with Caspian, like, oh man, it's so easy. It's just like awesome. And people don't grab him as much. They don't do stuff to him. Like here, they're so not used to it that they're complaining that he's there, or they're barking at him, or they're trying to grab him, or they're trying to use him as like distraction for their kids. That's a super annoying one. Like, yes, I brought my dog so that it could babysit your kid. Only place in my town that sells service dogs. Dogs are like $10,000, and there's a 2-year waiting. Yeah, those are probably your physical disabilities. How can someone prove that their dog is an ESA? By having a written letter from a therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, or counselor stating that you need to have one. If anyone ever comes to Australia, your dog legally needs to have an ID and registered under one of the training facilities. You know, that's good. Like, the United States needs to do that because we're just overwhelmed with fake service dogs. Okay, so yeah, I think that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely answered a lot of questions and talked about a lot of stuff. So I hope it was fun for you guys. Let me know on like Twitter, Instagram, what you guys want to be talking about. Next week, we're probably going to be talking about dogs and allergies and how to work with dogs that have allergies and what you can do to figure out what those allergies are. A lot of dogs have food allergies, and they show just small signs that sometimes people don't pick up on until they actually get an infection. So we're going to be talking about all of that probably next week. So thank you guys so much for joining me. This has been a lot of fun, and I will see you guys next time.